The injured alien woman was left for dead until a human man rescued her. Jace Rennick had long ago stopped checking his distress beacon. Not because he didn't want to be rescued. He was terribly fond of survival. But because it had been blinking no signal for 47 straight days, and he'd begun to suspect it was mocking him. It was currently propped up on a stack of empty nutrient paste cartridges, wearing a pair of sunglasses and a mustache drawn in permanent marker. Even his loneliness had a sense of irony. The moon, known formally as GX 57113, but colloquially as Splat Rock, wasn't entirely devoid of charm. The sky was a purplish haze filled with distant debris rings, and the atmosphere was breathable as long as you didn't mind occasional lungfuls of metallic spores. Jace had made a home out of the wreckage of his shuttle pod, and an unfortunate Zarethian drone that had exploded in just the right shape to form a roof. His AI companion Spanner had uploaded itself into the shell of an old hover mop and now rolled around the shelter like a judgmental Roomba with boundary issues. "If you're gonna die here," Spanner said one morning, "could you at least do it with some dramatic flair? Maybe fall into a lava pit or get eaten by something with more than 6 legs. The memoir writes alone." "I'm not dying," Jace muttered, elbow deep in a defunct solar charger. "I'm innovating." There's a difference. Yes, innovators leave behind legacies. You leave behind burnt toast and bad decisions. He was about to retort when the seismic sensor buzzed once. Just once. That was unusual. The moon was full of tremors, sure, but they didn't usually ping so close. Jace paused, then pulled up the topographic scan. Something had hit the ground 5 clicks west of his shelter. It wasn't big, no shockwave, no thermal spike, but it was definitely something metallic. And that meant salvage. "Suit up," he said, already moving. "If I'm lucky, it's a cargo pod filled with coffee. If you're lucky, it's a cargo pod filled with grenades," Spanner muttered. The walk was not particularly long, but it was annoyingly bumpy. Jagged terrain slashed through the moon's surface like a child had drawn a topographic map with a fork. Jace dodged sulfur vents, sidestepped a glowing patch of moss that once tried to eat his boot, and eventually found the source of the ping nestled in a shallow crater. It wasn't a pod. It was a person. A Zarethian woman lay sprawled across the rocks, one arm twisted beneath her, silver-black armor split and cracked like an overripe fruit. Her long ears, iconic, unmistakable, twitched slightly, though the rest of her was frighteningly still. A thin trail of blood, iridescent, bluish, and wholly inappropriate for polite dinner conversation, leaked from a wound just below her ribs. "Oh no," Jace said. "Nope. No-huh. We are not doing this." He turned to go. He really did. Got a solid 3 steps before a soft, rasping voice stopped him. Coward, he turned back. Her eyes were open, barely, but they glowed faintly in the dim light, sharp and oddly serene. "Excuse me," Jace said. "I'm not a coward. I'm an engineer. Big difference. You, walk away. Leave me." "Well, I was going to, but now you've hurt my feelings." Her head dropped slightly. A strange, pained smile curved her lips. "Good. You have them." Jace sighed so hard it could have powered a wind turbine. "You're bleeding. Your armor's trashed, and I'm guessing the fleet that dropped you here isn't circling back for round 2. "Correct. So why should I help you?" "You shouldn't." "That's what I thought." He stared at her. She stared back, or at least approximated it while blinking very, very slowly. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hiss of a geyser venting far off across the plain. "I swear to every deity in the Terran catalog," Jace muttered, kneeling beside her. "If you try to stab me after I save your life, I will be extremely put out." She passed out after that, which was probably for the best. Hauling a fully armored Zarethian was not easy, and Jace had to rig a sled from a broken panel and half a hover disc. Spanner, as usual, provided moral support by rolling in circles and muttering sarcastic poetry. Back at the shelter, he laid her out on the one cot, patched what wounds he could, and spent 3 hours arguing with the medkit, which refused to acknowledge Zarethian anatomy. "Just glue it shut," he shouted. "This unit is not certified for alien physiology," it replied primly. "I'm not certified for breathing recycled sock air, but here we are." Eventually, with a combination of sealant foam, surgical thread, and what may have been chewing gum, he stabilized her. She slept, her breathing shallow but steady. The next morning, she woke up and immediately tried to sit upright. Bad idea. "Stay down," Jace ordered. You've got 3 cracked ribs, a busted hip, and at least 1 organ leaking something that smells like battery acid." She blinked at him. "You smell like sulfur and failure." "You're welcome." She looked around slowly, taking in the cluttered chaos of his shelter, the dim glow of jury-rigged power strips, the humming AI mop, and the walls scrawled with maintenance notes, grocery lists, and what looked like a detailed sketch of a sandwich. "Where am I?" "Home sweet hellhole," Jace said. "Population, 2.5, depending on how you count the toaster." She looked at him for a long moment, then asked, "Why would you help me?" Jace hesitated. He could have said anything. That he was lonely, that he was bored, that he was a sucker for a challenge, or just a man with a soft spot for tragic space princesses with defiant cheekbones. Instead, he shrugged, "Because you're not my enemy." She closed her eyes again. For a moment, Jace thought she'd drifted off, but then she whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Then what am I?" Jace sat down beside her, pulled a half-melted protein bar from his jacket, and took a bite. It tasted like burnt peanuts and, "Right now," he said, mouthful, "you're a house guest with very pointy ears." She smiled faintly and then finally slept. The first thing Aelira did when she could stand on her own again was try to dismantle Jace's fusion kettle. She stared at it like it had personally insulted her lineage. Jace watched her squint at the lid with surgical precision, her fingers hovering over the joints like she was disarming a bomb. "You touch that kettle," he said, "and I will cry, loudly, for hours, possibly in song." "This construct is inefficient," she replied, pulling a screwdriver from thin air. "Its thermocoil alignment is incorrect by at least 17 microns. Yes, and it still boils water faster than my love life. Don't ruin this for me." She gave him a look, flat, judgmental, and just faintly curious. Her long ears twitched once. She returned the screwdriver to wherever it had come from, which unnerved Jace slightly. He didn't want to know how many tools she had hidden in her boot. They had fallen into a rhythm of sorts. Aelira healed quickly. Zarethian biology was annoyingly efficient, but her mobility was still limited. She spent most of her time perched on a salvaged hover crate that Jace had converted into a pseudo-couch, occasionally muttering critiques about the structural flaws of his shelter while pretending not to eavesdrop on his one-sided conversations with Spanner. "You'd think a military commander would know how to relax," Jace told Spanner while rerouting a solar capacitor. "But no, she stares at the walls like they owe her money." "She's traumatized," Spanner replied, "and you haven't cleaned the walls since day 7. They might actually owe someone something." Aelira, pretending to be asleep, cracked one eye open. "Your artificial intelligence is defective." "Yeah, but he's all I've got, like an evil space Roomba I can't return." She closed her eyes again. "You grow on people like moss." They spent the next few days attempting what Jace optimistically referred to as cooperative survival, and what Aelira called barely contained mutual toleration. He showed her how to operate the food synthesizer, which immediately exploded when she requested sustenance compatible with Zarethian plasma metabolism. He introduced her to coffee, which she declared both revolting and fascinating. She introduced him to Zarethian field meditation, which he declared a fancy way to sit still and hallucinate. They discovered that her hearing was so advanced she could detect the low-frequency hum of the planet's tectonic stabilizers. "This moon is unstable," she said flatly one morning. "It was partially terraformed, then abandoned." "I mean, same." She didn't laugh at first, but over time her smiles became less rare. She even snorted once when Spanner mispronounced her name as Aardvark. It wasn't a dignified sound. Jace considered it a personal victory. And then came the quake. It wasn't massive, just a gentle roll, like a ship rocking an atmosphere. But it was unnatural, rhythmic, pulsed almost. And it came with a tone, deep, low, like a whale song slowed to a crawl. Aelira stood instantly, alert, every line of her body tense. Her ears twitched sharply, scanning the sound. "That is not geological." "I was hoping you wouldn't say that," Jace muttered. They scanned the region. The ground where Aelira had crashed was vibrating faintly, like something under it had shifted. Old metal twisted beneath the dust, exposed now, half-buried tech. Zarethian, but ancient, older than the war. "This is pre-Federation tech," Aelira said, crouching to inspect it. "Zarethians once seeded moons like this with sentinel stations, observation posts, some experimental." Jace tapped the hull with a wrench. "Is this where the glowing fungus came from?" Aelira didn't answer. They dug out more of the structure. Circular, buried deep, and still faintly powered, they found an access panel, half dead, and managed to spark it to life with a fusion spark from Jace's welder. The interface blinked on and greeted them in something neither of them recognized. It flickered through languages until it settled, barely, on an ancient dialect of Zarethian. Translation's buggy. But it's warning us. About what? She read the flickering text again. Containment breach. Biological anomaly. Do not disturb core matrix. Disturb it how? Jace asked. As if in response, the console sparked and a holographic map appeared, showing a massive chamber beneath the surface. Something moved inside it, slow, twitching, like a heartbeat. They both stared. So, Jace said, on a scale from mild inconvenience to ancient world-ending horror. That depends, Aelira said. Do you consider bioluminescent psychic spores a mild inconvenience? Spanner, Jace called. How fast can we evacuate? Current escape velocity 0. Current fuel reserves less than a vending machine. Well, Jace said, rubbing his face, that's comforting. They sealed the panel again and returned to the shelter in silence. That night, neither of them slept much. Jace tried, but dreams of glowing roots wrapping around his ankles kept dragging him awake. Aelira stood by the window, listening. In the early morning hours, she finally spoke. I was left here for asking the wrong question, she said. I asked what the war was really for, what we were protecting, who we were becoming. Jace didn't respond. He knew that kind of question, the kind that didn't get you answers, only enemies. I disobeyed. My fleet left me, and now? She gestured vaguely toward the ground beneath them. Now I suspect I was closer to the truth than I knew. He nodded slowly. You think that thing down there is part of it? I think the war was built on it. Jace picked up a wrench, turned it over in his hands. Well, he said, good news is if it eats us, we'll finally get off this moon. She smiled again. Not softly. Then let's make sure it has to work for it. Jace spent the morning swearing at a thermal regulator that refused to recognize its own existence. I'm not saying you're obsolete, he grunted, elbow deep in wires, but you've been blinking error for 7 days and I'm starting to think it's not just a cry for help. You're yelling at a box, Spanner noted. Again. I'm building rapport. Don't interrupt. Across the shelter, Aelira sat cross-legged on the floor, disassembling a Zarethian grav sensor with unnerving precision. Her fingers moved like clockwork. A pile of suspiciously important-looking parts was growing beside her. Jace glanced over. Hey, just checking. You're not using those parts for a doomsday device, right? She didn't look up. Define doomsday. Something that ends in fire, screaming, or a planetary drift. Then no. He stared at her for another beat. Was that a joke? Aelira blinked slowly. Possibly. Outside, the moon groaned again. The pulses had become regular, 20-hour intervals, almost like tides, but artificial. Jace had charted them on a wall panel labeled Definitely Not Doom. Each time the quake was stronger, and the biosignature from beneath the crust pulsed brighter. So, Jace said later, staring at the scan display, either the thing buried down there is waking up, or it really needs a bathroom break. Aelira studied the data. It's growing. Jace looked at her sideways. Growing like teenager with a grudge or growing like interstellar fungus? Both. Well, at least we know it's ambitious. They decided to scout the site more thoroughly. Jace built a remote crawler, basically a toaster with legs and a really bad attitude, and sent it down a tunnel they'd widened. The crawler immediately fell into a crevice and exploded. Aelira arched an eyebrow. Was that intentional? Yes, Jace lied. I wanted to measure the depth. It's, very deep. So they went themselves, the tunnels below, not just old, ancient, lined with carbonized alloy that wasn't native to any known tech. Glyphs marked the walls, flickering faintly as they passed, responding to Aelira's presence. Her ears vibrated slightly. They know me, she said softly. Creepy, Jace muttered. Also, possibly flattering? They reached a chamber, spherical, massive, and filled with pulsating root-like structures. The center housed a cocoon of sorts, transparent on one side, and filled with a bioluminescent liquid. Suspended inside was something. Vaguely humanoid, not quite alive. Jace took a step back. Okay, I take it back. This is doomsday. Absolutely doomsday. It's a precursor, Aelira said. To what? Planetary infection? Cosmic enlightenment? Giant angry grandma? She stepped forward. We called them the architects. Zarethian myth said they seeded the stars, but no one believed they were real. We thought it was just symbolic. Symbolic like poetry, or symbolic like alien biological supercomputers buried in moons? Both. He sighed. Why is it always both? The cocoon hummed when she approached, reacting to her presence like a pet sensing its owner. The glyphs on the wall blinked faster. It recognizes your genetic code, Spanner said, having dialed into the relay feed. I'm 93% sure it thinks you're either royalty or a warranty technician. Aelira touched the edge of the pod. The figure inside twitched slightly. Jace stepped back farther. Right. I vote we leave. Immediately. Maybe blow up the tunnel behind us. Maybe move to another moon. She looked at him. You don't want to understand what it is? No, I want to understand it from very far away. With charts. Possibly while hiding. The cocoon's hum deepened. Another pulse rocked the chamber. Then, without warning, the walls began to fold inward. Not collapse. Fold, like origami. The chamber was reconfiguring itself. They ran. Back in the shelter, Jace slapped the emergency seal on the hatch and fell to the floor, panting. So, he said between gasps, just brainstorming here. But what if we dig up the entire moon and throw it into the sun? Aelira sat calmly on the cot. We may not have that option. The structure is waking up, and it connected with me. Mentally? Spiritually? Bluetooth? She didn't answer. Later that evening, while Jace reprogrammed the kettle to play cheerful tones instead of alarm screams, Aelira stared at the static on the monitor. The glyphs had followed her, somehow imprinting on the shelter walls. They were alive. I was bred for war, she said suddenly. Jace said slowly. Bit of a mood swing, but go on. My genetic code was designed, enhanced. I was meant to be a weapon. And now the ancient moon mystery machine thinks you're its chosen one. Yes? That tracks. She glanced at him. You're not concerned? I've been living off flavorless paste for 2 months. If you turn into an ancient bioweapon and vaporize me, at least it'll be interesting. That night, the quake was stronger. Something rose from the earth, massive structures like antennae, bristling with energy. They pulsed in rhythm with Aelira's heartbeat. The moon was changing, and so was she. The first thing Jace noticed when he woke up was that the walls were humming. Not in a metaphorical, spiritual, the universe has spoken kind of way. No, literal humming. Like a cello string. Like a swarm of bees had decided to form a barbershop quartet and practice in his wiring. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and called out, Spanner, if you rerouted power to the coffee maker again, I swear I'll uninstall your sarcasm module. Unlikely, Spanner replied from the corner. Without me, your only conversational partner would be the compost bin. Hey, the bin listens. It doesn't judge. It also smells like boiled despair. Aelira was already awake, standing near the window, ears pointed toward the distant antennae structures now jutting out of the horizon. She hadn't spoken much since the chamber incident, but Jace could feel it. Something had shifted in her. Not just mentally, physically. Her eyes flickered sometimes now like static. Her voice carried undertones that weren't there before. I heard them last night, she said. The bees? The architects. Jace blinked. You're going to have to clarify whether that's a metaphor or a prepare the escape pod type statement. They spoke to me in frequencies. Old ones. Beneath hearing, but not beyond perception. They're waking up. And what do they want? Peace? War? Renovations? They want completion. Okay, see, that doesn't sound ominous at all. They ran diagnostics on the energy readings pulsing from the buried structure. The moon's core, previously inert, now radiated faint gravitational distortions. Like a black hole was practicing yoga in there. Strange magnetic fields bent their instruments, and the ground outside occasionally shimmered, as if something massive shifted in and out of phase. I've named it Moon Weirdness Level 5, Jace said, labeling the new dataset. Level 1 is mild disappointment. Level 5 is dimensionally unstable toast. Shouldn't Level 5 be higher than that? Oh, it goes up to 20. Level 20 is if I start seeing other versions of myself in reflective surfaces telling me to shave. Spanner rolled in a circle, unimpressed. At current rate of change, we'll hit Level 9 by midweek. Which is, reality begins to taste like strawberries. They weren't alone for long. Mid-afternoon, the motion sensors pinged. A Zarethian dropship, sleek, triangular, bristling with weapons, descended through the upper atmosphere, landing on the ridge a kilometer away. Tell me you're not popular enough for that to be a social visit, Jace said, grabbing his plasma rifle. They're not here for tea, Aelira replied. 3 figures emerged, battle-ready, cloaked in chromatic armor, visors blank. Zarethian blackguard, elite hunters silent, deadly, not great conversationalists. Jace ducked behind the console. Okay, plan? You stay here. Plan B? She stepped outside without another word. He watched on the monitor, heart thudding. The hunters didn't announce themselves. They simply aimed and fired. The plasma bolt hit nothing. Aelira wasn't there anymore, just a flicker of distortion. Then she was beside them, striking with speed Jace hadn't seen before. One went down, helmet sparking. Another swung a blade, only to be hurled through the air by a wave of invisible force. Telekinetic, new, impressive, terrifying. Did she just mind punch a guy? Jace asked aloud. Yes, Spanner, she's evolving. Into what? Something complicated. The last hunter fired a cryo grenade. Aelira caught it midair and redirected it back into his chest. Ice bloomed and he dropped. She returned calm, breath even. They weren't here to capture me, she said. They were here to silence me. Well, they did a pretty poor job. I think they were scouts. More will come. Jace rubbed his temples. Okay, so let me get this straight. Our moon has a buried alien god thing waking up, you're turning into a psionic conduit, and now your own people want you permanently deleted. Correct. He stared at her. This is the worst vacation I've ever taken. Later, while patching holes in the roof caused by shockwave backlash, Jace considered the implications. You realize, he said, balancing on a beam, that if more ships come, we don't have the resources to defend this place. We don't even have enough duct tape. We won't defend it, Aelira said. We'll activate the system beneath. Jace nearly fell off the roof. The ancient, possibly universe-ending system? It's not a weapon, it's a key, a relay. To what? Hell? A galactic telemarketing hub? To what we were, before the war, before we forgot. He climbed down. I'm gonna need more caffeine before I follow that. They returned to the buried chamber. The cocoon had changed, cracked slightly. Energy streamed from it now, latching onto Aelira like tendrils of light. She didn't resist. She let it flow into her, absorbing it like it was part of her. This feels right, she whispered. It also feels like the part in the movie where the guy yells, "You don't know what you're doing," right before the ceiling collapses. Glyphs on the walls ignited. Symbols floated in midair. Aelira pressed her palm to one. The cocoon dissolved. Inside was not a creature, but a node. A data repository, pure information, compressed thought. A galactic archive left behind by a race that no longer walked the stars. The knowledge surged into her. She staggered. Jace caught her. Okay, he said. Okay, what just happened? I know how to wake it all up. The planet? No, the whole network. You're not gonna like my next question. I know, he sighed. Do we? She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. I think we already did. The first time Jace saw the sky ripple, he blamed the coffee. He'd just taken a sip from a cup of synthesized mud that claimed to be hazelnut sunrise when the stars wobbled like someone had jostled the cosmic projector. He blinked, looked at Spanner, then back at the sky. Tell me that's not a hallucination. It's not a hallucination, Spanner replied. It's a multi-dimensional relay field. Also, your coffee is 11% paint solvent. That explains the aftertaste. Aelira stood at the edge of the ridge, staring up at the sky as though she were waiting for it to answer her. Her posture was different now. Less soldier, more conduit. She hummed with energy, not visibly, not like a lightning storm, but something deeper, like gravity had decided she was worth noticing again. You good? Jace asked, approaching with careful optimism. I remember now, she said, what the architects were, what they were trying to do. Please tell me it wasn't conquer the universe and sell it. They weren't conquerors. They were curators, collectors of civilization. They built the relay moons to connect minds, share knowledge, evolve together. And now they're offering us a choice. Spanner crackled over comms. You're going to want to see this. The feed from the orbital relay flickered to life. Dozens of signals, Zarethian ships, human vessels, a smattering of third-party raiders, smugglers, and at least one diplomatic envoy who had somehow gotten lost in subspace and showed up 2 years late. They all heard the signal, Aelira said. The relay called them. Jace leaned closer. And what? We give a TED talk to the galaxy? We give them a choice, war or connection. Oh good, he said, nothing at stake at all. The moon's buried system, now fully activated, had begun to resonate. Columns of light stretched skyward, brushing the upper atmosphere, forming a visible pattern that resembled a neural map, or a star chart, or both. "It's alive," Jace whispered. "The whole thing's a brain." "A lattice," Aelira corrected, "built to bind the minds of those who chose to share. And if they don't? The signal shuts down, the lattice goes dormant, the chance is lost." "Well," Jace said, "we've clearly reached the point of the story where we press the glowy button and hope for the best." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "You've changed. I bathe more regularly now. You believe in people. You didn't before." "I didn't believe in aliens trying to save the galaxy either, but here we are." They returned to the chamber. The data node floated now, suspended in its cradle of ancient tech, pulsating slowly, waiting. Aelira placed both hands on it. "What if they choose war?" Jace asked. "Then we gave them something better to ignore." She closed her eyes. The chamber glowed. Above the moon, the ships hesitated. Comms were flooded with confused chatter, threats, inquiries. Then silence. Then, one by one, the signals stabilized. Jace listened. First came the Zarethian science vessel declaring a ceasefire. Then a human diplomat asking for the terms of connection. Then others. Fragments of peace. Not all, but enough. The lattice blinked once more and projected. A sphere of memory, shared, history, culture, science, emotion. The best and worst of everyone who'd ever walked beneath stars. It flooded the ships. Not control, invitation. Some rejected it, sped away. Fine, but most stayed. When it was over, Jace found himself seated outside, staring at the calm sky, cup in hand. Aelira sat beside him, quiet. "We didn't explode." "Not yet." "Progress." Spanner rolled up. "You two are now legally responsible for half a dozen diplomatic treaties and at least one interstellar wedding proposal. Also, someone named Glarg is naming a moon after you. Tell Glarg I want royalties." Jace looked at Aelira. "You're not going back, are you?" She shook her head. "There's no back. Not anymore." "And forward?" She reached into her coat, pulled out a crystalline node. "There are more relays. Buried, sleeping." He grinned. "So we're going on a road trip?" "We? Hey, someone has to keep you from rebuilding the toaster into a mind ray." She tilted her head. "What is a road trip?" "Painful, loud, often sticky, but worth it." A beat passed. "Let's go," she said. As they boarded the patched-together shuttle, still more metal miracle than spacecraft, the relay moon pulsed behind them, stable and quiet. The stars opened up, not with fury but with potential, and for the first time in a long time, Jace believed in what might come next. The end.